All right, thank you, Rich. So for all of you that don't know me, I'm Jordan Mayberry. I'm a part of the Dean Academy ran by Katie Moore. And so I think we're always looking for more Duke neurology educators to come aboard on this academy. It's a fun thing. We have a few different meetings throughout the year and then get the opportunity to come in front of you all and do some series. So for my talk today, I'm going to try to keep it a little bit brief since we're maybe behind a little bit of time. There will be no floating spiders or anything like that in this presentation. I'm sorry, Rich. But my topic is going to be about medical student learning preferences. So learning preferences obviously are going to be different among medical students. So why should we care here? Well, I mean, by understanding learning preferences, educators are better poised to respond to the changing needs of our students. And so this talk is mainly going to be centered around this recent paper that was published in Neurology Education journal. If you all have never went over to that and seen it, it's a great new neurology or journal in neurology. Actually, Roy Stroud, which was one of the doctors in this paper, came and talked to us a little bit about this at Duke. This one was back in 2023, and again, it's really talking about the evolving medical students' learning preference and its relationship to clerkship satisfaction. So a little bit of background about how this study was performed. So they used a tool to assess medical student satisfaction with learning preference inventory, LPI. And so that had three different types of domain in it. That's the content delivery, which is usually talking about like concrete versus abstract, instruction, which is going to be either teacher-centered versus student-centered, and then learning structure, which is more individual versus interpersonal. So preference is different than style. So style is actually how an individual perceives and processes information in learning situations, whereas preference is going to be the choice of one learning situation or condition over another. So there's actually been a few studies. There was one in a medical education journal back in 2021 that studied style and the preference of style and how the outcomes for shelf exams, different things of that sort correlated and actually didn't correlate. So even though people had certain styles that they might prefer, that didn't really correlate with necessarily like better scores on exams. So this primary outcome for this article was describing learning preferences of students in neurology and how that correlated with their satisfaction in their curricular elements. So this is the LPI. I didn't really know much about this until reading this article. Actually, I guess it was invented back in '74, so been out for a little while, but basically Rich was alive then. I was not. So kind of breaking it down into those three domains. So you have the content delivery, right? So content delivery can be concrete. So concrete is going to be more something like a practical task or skill. So perhaps in neurology, like a lumbar puncture, right? Whereas abstract is going to be more theory-based, some hypothesis that people are going to be more geared towards. Then you come down to the second domain being instructions. And so this could be teacher-centered, so which I think a lot of us are a little bit more used to. So teacher-oriented class, they give assignments, goals, versus student-centered, where their students are actually organizing their own task and kind of self-directed learning there. For the learning structure itself, they also broke it down into individual, so kind of tells you what it is, right? So basically working alone versus interpersonal, so like in a group of students together. To be able to quantify this, they ended up doing like a 1 through 6 scale. So 1 being like the least promoting for learning for you, 6 being the most. And then they were able to give certain questions, and then the students would ask their or rate these amongst themselves. And then it would be given in a certain like formula. So results, so interesting. This was done at one institution. There was about 530 students that took part in this. It was over about a 5-year period, so like 2015 to 2020, they started getting into a little bit of COVID issues there at the last part of it. And this institution, actually, the neurology clerkship could be done second, third, or fourth year. So these numbers are from about a little bit over 50% were third years, and then low 20s for MS2s and MS4s. So interesting here. I mean, about 83% of the students that took the survey there were more concrete learners as compared to abstract. So quite a bit higher there. But in terms of like teacher structured classrooms versus like a student one, it was pretty split, and it was exactly split 50% interpersonal versus individual. They were able to actually even break this down a little bit more actually per like medical student years, and found that there was a clinical significance for the individual versus interpersonal. So it seemed like as the students were getting older, so MS3s and 4s, they much rather preferred individual studying as compared to like group studying with interpersonal. So thought that that was pretty interesting. Otherwise, as far as like satisfaction, everything, there wasn't any major, everybody was essentially satisfied with the curriculum content and thing. Interesting enough, even though this was a low number of abstract people, the ones that were actually preferred virtual simulation labs way more than the people that were voting for concrete kind of thinking. So kind of wrapping up here. So the dominance of concrete learning preference for content delivery may reflect the skills typically associated with pre-med academic success. So we might actually be selecting for these students, right? So whenever you think of prerequisite coursework and stuff, people are typically shadowing, they're volunteering, doing research. So that might actually be a little bit why we're seeing that like 83% more concrete thinking as compared to the abstract. I did find it interesting to know about the difference in years as far as that goes. So maybe as MS3s and 4s, the values are really more directed towards self-directed clerkship. They did give a few other things, you know, perhaps like they're out at different places, and so they're not amongst their peers as they are in the classroom in MS2 years. So that might be playing a little bit of a part in that as well. And kind of my 2 cents as far as this goes. So if a student has a preference of one learning situation over another, then likely they're going to be more engaged, right? And so if we can get our students more engaged, we can't necessarily make a individualized curriculum for our students, but maybe we can do one that varies with designs and delivery methods, and they might be able to choose from that. And hopefully, if we do that in neurology, we can actually get more students going into neurology. So the hope is if we're able to learn or teach more towards their learning preference, perhaps their residency choice in neurology might be a little bit higher numbers for us. So I thought it was an interesting study, and hopefully more to come in the future.